Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was a little past closing time at the Dollar Tree off Route 9 in a small New Jersey town that didn't get a lot of through traffic. The kind of town where nothing really changed and no one really left. Sarah had just taken the night shift after her last job at a bookstore went under. She liked the quiet, and Dollar Tree was almost always empty in the evenings. Still, something about this store felt off. On her first shift, the manager, Frank, handed her the keys and warned her, almost as a joke, "Don't go in the back alone after 10. He laughed, but his eyes didn't. Sarah laughed along, thinking it was some kind of hazing thing. But then the power flickered just after 10 p.m. A chill ran through the store. She figured it was just bad wiring and went on restocking. A week in, the weird stuff started. The toy aisle was always messed up. No matter how neatly she organized it, the shelves would be torn apart by morning. Plastic dolls, those cheap hollow ones, would be scattered across the floor, some missing limbs or with eyes gouged out. Frank kept blaming neighborhood kids sneaking in somehow. But one night, she was cleaning up the aisle when she noticed something strange. One of the dolls wasn't one she recognized. Its head was too big, the smile too wide. It looked old, like it had been soaked in something that warped the plastic. She picked it up, and its eye fell out in her hand. She threw it out, but the next night it was back on the shelf. Sarah told Frank, but he shrugged and said, "Don't throw them away. Just leave them where they are." It got worse. She started hearing things, a scraping sound coming from the stockroom after hours. The hum of the fluorescent lights would suddenly cut out, and in that silence, she'd hear whispering. Not like voices from outside, but like someone standing just behind her shoulder. One night, she turned to find rows of those same dolls lined up along the checkout counter. She checked the security footage. That's when things got terrifying. Between 10:01 and 10:23 p.m., the feed cut to static. When it came back, the camera over the toy aisle showed something moving, something crawling, thin and jerky, like a shadow glitching across the screen. No definition, just long limbs and this awful clicking sound that even the camera's mic picked up. She showed Frank and he paled. "We had a guy who worked here last year. Found him in the back room after closing. Said something came out of the walls. He quit, moved away. Stores had problems ever since." That night, Sarah made the mistake of staying past 10:30. She wanted to prove it was just her imagination, or maybe some messed up prank. She turned off all the lights and waited in the break room with a flashlight and her phone recording. The temperature dropped suddenly. Her breath fogged in front of her. Then she heard it. Scratching. Not on the door, but inside the walls, like nails dragging along drywall. She turned on the flashlight just as the lights above flickered and blew out. The scratching stopped, and then something spoke. Not in words, but in this low, gurgling hum that made her stomach twist. It came from the wall behind her. Slowly, a crack formed, as if the wall was breathing, expanding. Something was pressing through. The drywall split open, and a face, not human, not even close, pushed out. Pale, wet, with too many teeth and two black eyes that pulsed like ink drops in water. Sarah screamed and ran, knocking over displays and slipping on fallen toys. The doors wouldn't open. She was trapped inside with it. She backed into a corner, flashlight flickering, when suddenly everything stopped. The lights came back on. The doors opened. Morning light spilled in. She quit that day. Frank didn't even look surprised when she handed him her keys. She found out later that the store used to be a funeral home back in the 50s, torn down after a fire. 3 people were never accounted for. They say the basement, now sealed off, is still down there, under the store, still full of bones. No one stays long at that Dollar Tree, and no one ever goes in the back after 10.
Story number 2.
It was a rainy night when Jessica's shift started at the local Dollar Tree. She was just 19, trying to make ends meet while attending college. She didn't mind the late shifts. They were quiet, and she could pass the time listening to music and organizing the shelves. But tonight felt different. The air was thicker, colder, and there was a strange tension in the store that she couldn't shake. Around 9:30 p.m., the store started to empty out. There were only a couple of customers left, wandering the aisles with baskets of junk. The fluorescent lights above buzzed, flickering sporadically as though something was off with the wiring. Jessica barely noticed it until the flickering began to get worse. Then came the first strange sound. It was soft at first, like something dragging across the tile floor in the back aisles, but it was almost imperceptible. She thought it was just the old air conditioning unit, or maybe the noise of the automatic door opening and closing. But the sound continued. It grew louder, and now it sounded like something was scraping slowly against the walls. Curious, Jessica checked the camera monitor. The footage showed the entire store from above. The aisles were empty, but on one screen, the aisle with the toys, there was something moving, something small and dark, creeping along the shelves. Her breath caught in her throat. She zoomed in. The thing, whatever it was, seemed to be crawling, not walking. It was low to the ground, its body twisting and contorting unnaturally, like it was made of something not quite human. She blinked, convinced she was seeing things, but when she looked again, it was still there. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out completely, plunging the store into total darkness. The hum of the lights was replaced by a sharp, deafening silence. The door alarms went off, but no one entered. It was as if the store had been frozen in time. Jessica fumbled for her flashlight, her hands shaking. She turned it on and began moving cautiously toward the toy aisle. That's when she saw it. The thing. It wasn't small anymore. It had grown, almost doubled in size, and was now hunched in the aisle, its back arched, shoulders cracking as it moved toward her. Its eyes, if you could call them eyes, were wide black voids, and its mouth hung open in a grotesque grin, lined with rows of needle-like teeth. Jessica froze. Her flashlight trembled in her grip, casting frantic shadows around the store. The thing moved faster now, its limbs bending at odd angles, its head jerking unnaturally with each step. It made a clicking sound as it approached. Then the light snapped back on, blinding her for a moment. The thing, whatever it was gone. The aisle was empty. Jessica ran to the back, her heart hammering in her chest. She locked herself in the supply room, clutching her phone. When she checked the security cameras again, the toy aisle was completely normal. Everything was exactly as it had been before. The shelves were intact, the toys neatly stacked, except for one. A single doll was missing its face. Its eyes were hollow black pits, and its mouth was twisted into a grotesque smile. She left. She didn't even care about finishing her shift. She just ran out, not stopping until she reached her car. The next day, she called Frank, the manager. He wasn't surprised. In fact, he sounded almost relieved. "Yeah, I heard about that," Frank said, almost casually. "It's been happening for years. Something about that store, something about the walls. People say it's haunted. Others say it's the old storage room under the building. But no one stays long enough to figure it out. If you're smart, you won't go back." Jessica didn't. But when she passed by the Dollar Tree a few days later, she saw someone she knew from her shift, standing by the door. She looked closer. It was her. But when Jessica blinked, the person was gone.
Story number 3.
It was a cold, windy night when Kyle started his shift at the Dollar Tree in a rundown part of town. He had worked there for almost a year, and over time, he'd gotten used to the store's strange quirks. Its unsettling noises, its dim lighting, the way the air seemed to always feel a little too heavy. But tonight, something was different. He was restocking the cleaning supplies aisle when the lights flickered. It was nothing new. The store's old electrical system often caused the lights to blink out at random intervals. But this time, they didn't come back on. Kyle pulled out his phone to use the flashlight and continued to work, but the feeling of unease only grew. The store felt quieter than usual. The sound of the wind howling outside and the faint creaking of the building filled the air. He heard something then, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper coming from somewhere behind him. He paused, trying to focus. It was faint, like a voice murmuring words he couldn't understand. He turned around quickly, but the aisle was empty. He tried to shake it off, but the whispering persisted. This time, it was louder, as though the words were directly behind him. He spun around again, but no one was there. His heart began to race. In an attempt to calm himself, Kyle made his way to the front of the store to check the cameras. As he approached the register area, something caught his eye. The old wooden cabinet in the corner of the store, near the employee break room. It wasn't much, just a small storage space, no one ever used. But the door to the cabinet was slightly ajar. He didn't remember leaving it like that. The whispering started again, this time more insistent, more demanding. Kyle felt a chill run down his spine as the sound seemed to draw closer, closing in around him. It was like something was standing just outside of his view. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Suddenly the lights flickered again, and this time they went out completely. The store was pitch black. Kyle's breath quickened. He could hear the distant rustling of what sounded like paper. And then, unmistakably, the creak of the cabinet door opening wider. Kyle stood frozen, his phone's flashlight casting long, jagged shadows across the floor. The whispering grew louder and louder, as though it were right next to him. The rustling noise became frantic, like someone or something was rummaging through the cabinets in the break room. Unable to stand it anymore, Kyle took a step forward, his heartbeat thudding in his ears. He shined the flashlight toward the break room. The cabinet door was now wide open. Inside, there was a pile of empty plastic bags scattered across the floor. Kyle could barely make out a figure hunched in the corner of the cabinet, its body twisted unnaturally. It looked like a person, at first glance, but then he noticed that it wasn't moving like a person. It was bending at strange angles, its arms and legs warped, like they were breaking under its own weight. He turned to run, but the light snapped back on, blinding him. The thing in the cabinet was gone. The bags were neatly stacked on the shelf. Kyle didn't know what he had seen, but he knew one thing for sure. Something had been in that cabinet, and whatever it wasn't human. The next day, when he mentioned it to the other employees, they all gave him the same answer. Don't go near the break room after dark. No one who's worked here has ever gone in there at night. There's something in the walls. Kyle didn't stay much longer. He found another job, left the Dollar Tree, and never looked back. But even now, when he passes that old store, he still swears he sees something watching him from the darkened window.
Story number 4.
It was a quiet, almost serene night when Amanda clocked in for her late shift at the Dollar Tree in a small, nondescript town. It wasn't the kind of place that attracted tourists or even regulars, mostly just people passing through or locals who didn't have much money. Still, Amanda enjoyed the simplicity of it all. The store was nearly empty, save for a few bored shoppers quietly pushing their carts through the aisles. Around 10 p.m., the air in the store seemed to change. Amanda didn't notice at first, but as the minutes dragged on, she began to feel an odd pressure in her chest. It was like she was being watched. She chalked it up to the late hour and continued folding the store's sale flyers at the front counter. The store's overhead lights flickered, and the sound of the faint buzz they made suddenly stopped. The store plunged into unnatural silence. Amanda froze, her pen hovering in midair. Her eyes darted to the aisle behind her. Then came the sound. A soft, slow dragging sound, like something heavy was being pulled across the floor. Her heart raced as she tried to rationalize it. Maybe one of the display racks had fallen over. Maybe one of the customers had knocked something off. But the sound grew louder, closer. Amanda stood up and walked cautiously toward the source, her footsteps echoing through the empty store. When she turned the corner, she saw something she would never forget. A lone shopping cart was slowly moving down the aisle on its own, its wheels scraping across the floor. There was no one near it, no one to explain its eerie motion. Amanda's breath caught in her throat. She stood frozen for a moment, staring at the cart, before she quickly glanced around the store. The aisles were empty. The door hadn't opened, but then the cart stopped, as if it had a mind of its own, and then it turned. It spun 180 degrees in a perfect arc and started rolling back toward the aisle she had just come from. Amanda's body locked up, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. She could feel a chill creeping up her spine as she instinctively backed away, her hand reaching for her phone. That was when she heard the whisper. It came from behind her, from the empty aisles, a low, guttural murmur, too quiet to make out the words, but too distinct to be anything other than human. Without thinking, she ran toward the back of the store, toward the stock room. She slammed the door behind her, heart pounding, and locked it. She tried to steady her breath, the silence pressing down on her, but it wasn't silent. The whispering was louder now, coming from the walls. the sound of paper rustling. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in. She leaned against the shelves, trying to calm herself, but something else was wrong. Something was moving behind her. She turned, and there, standing at the edge of the stockroom, was a figure. It was small, hunched over, with long, crooked limbs and a face that was too pale, too smooth to be real. Its eyes were wide, black, and empty. It was watching her with a gaze that made her blood run cold. Amanda didn't remember running. The next thing she knew, she was standing outside the store, gasping for breath, staring at the locked doors in front of her. The lights flickered back on behind her, casting a harsh, artificial glow through the windows. She could see the shelves neatly lined up inside, the aisles clear. But there was no sign of the things she had seen, no sign of anything strange at all. Amanda didn't speak to anyone the next day. She quit her job. She packed up her things and left the town, never looking back. She couldn't explain what had happened, but she knew that whatever was in that store was not meant to be seen by anyone. And the worst part? She had just gotten a glimpse of something that wasn't supposed to be there. She could still hear the whispering sometimes, especially when she passed by an empty building, the faint scrape of a shopping cart that never seemed to stop moving.